She is the woman behind the efforts to bring films from filmmakers of color to an international audience. Lisa Simmons discusses her work with the Roxbury International Film Festival and the Color of Film Collaborative and what she believes makes a great film. That's coming up next on The PowerPLAY Show.
From the studios at Hull-Bay Productions, this is Season 3 of The PowerPLAY Show. Now, here's Tonya McGrath.
Welcome to The PowerPLAY Show. I'm Tonya McGrath. My guest this week helps filmmakers like myself showcase their projects to audiences all over the world. Lisa Simmons is the director of the Roxbury International Film Festival and the Color of Film Collaborative, whose mission is to screen films that celebrate people of color across the world and support filmmakers who are creating media aligned with their mission. The festival is now in its 23rd year and has screened over 1,800 films. Ms. Simmons has also produced theater and film in the Boston area and has published and presented the WPA's Negro Theater Project that existed between 1935 and 1939. She is currently working on a feature-length documentary about the Boston Negro Theater Unit. In addition, Ms. Simmons is the program manager at the Mass Cultural Council, overseeing the administration and granting of funds for the local Cultural Council program and the festival's programs. She is the recipient of several awards, including GK Top 100 Influential People of Color, Image Award from Women in Film New England, Diversity Award from our Place Theater Project, Leadership Award from the Urban League Guild of Eastern Massachusetts, and the President's Award for Leadership from Dimmick Community Health Center. It is my pleasure to welcome Lisa Simmons to the PowerPLAY Show. Welcome.
Well, thank you for that. That was incredible. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I've been trying to get you on for a while, and I'm really so glad that we have an opportunity to do this because I just feel like it's a really exciting time now for independent filmmakers. And you're just hearing about projects all over the world. You're hearing how they are influencing Hollywood, even with the Academy Awards and Emmy Awards. So what is your kind of pulse on what's happening with independent filmmaking right now?
I think it's exploding, and I think it's a really, really exciting time because of technology, because of opportunities, because of distribution and self-distribution. I think that, with the advent of, like iPhones and smaller cameras, people can capture stories from all over the world. And it's no longer, there are no longer these barriers that there used to be, that you'd have to like lug in these big cameras and you'd have to get permits for locations. You'd have to do all this. I mean, I just feel like the creativity is amazing and the storytelling is incredible and the opportunity. I think really that's it. And what we have seen over the last, 20 some odd years of doing Rox Film is that it just gets deeper and richer and more exciting. And like we are constantly learning about all of these worlds that, that we wouldn't have been able to see before.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a step back and start with how you developed this love of film.
It's funny because, I started in this business as an actress. And, it wasn't something that, I did when I was younger or when I was in high school or, anything like that. I really had this thought when I graduated from college that I was like, oh, I think I want to be an actress, and started taking classes in Boston with a bunch of, casting companies, and landed my first role in a Old Spice commercial and thought like that was it. I'm going to go to Hollywood and then that didn't happen, but that's okay because, I did that for a number of years and really felt like I wanted to go behind the camera and went back to school to get my master's at Emerson in film and video production. And that really was sort of like the change when I sort of realized, it isn't an equal playing ground out there for everyone. And we need to provide opportunities for our filmmakers of color, especially during that time. It was, in the 90s that it was like there was only really one kind of Black film that people would distribute, right, and would exhibit. So we, with Act Roxbury, we partnered and started a film festival really to focus on local filmmakers who weren't getting into other festivals. And here we are, like 24 years later, thousands, 1,000 some odd films, filmmakers from around the world. It went from local to international, and it continues to grow. And I think what makes it really special for us and the work that we do, the team at Rox Film, is that we're a filmmaker festival. And you know that. It's not about celebrity. It's really about, pulling together filmmakers so they can connect and network and be better and do better and have better experiences.
Were you a film buff growing up as a child? Were you, going to films? Were you going to the theater? I mean, back then we could go to the movies for like, what, $1.50 or something like that?
Oh my gosh, right. I was always in the arts, right? My parents, especially my mom, was always taking us to some sort of event. I remember going to see Fantasia when I was maybe like 5 or something, and Peter and the Wolf, in Boston, and thinking, wow, this is really incredible. This is, live theater, live music. And so it's always been a really big part of our lives. So yeah. And then watching movies, big movie watchers and multiple time movie watchers. Some people will say, oh, I've seen that film. I'm like, oh, I've seen it like 40 times.
Right.
It's sort of like funny. And my sister and our kids are the same way. They're like, yeah, they watch something like over and over and over again. And quoting movies all the time too, which is really fun. So I think so. It's funny because I didn't realize until I was at Emerson that my grandfather and my aunts and uncles were all involved in this Negro theater project, which took place during the WPA, right? So it was where the government paid actors to put on theater, thinking it was much like the WP, just much like building bridges and doing all that. Like, actors really needed to bring life to communities. And so my grandfather was a stage manager for the Negro Theater in Boston. My uncle, Frank Silvera, who went on to do High Chaparral and all sorts of other things, was an actor. And so it was sort of like, wow, maybe this was like in my blood somewhere, somehow. But yeah, I mean, there's always been a connection.
What is your kind of favorite go-to film genre?
Oh my gosh. Really? Do I have to answer that? Romantic comedy. I hate to say it, but I love a good rom-com.
Yeah.
I really do. Although I've just been watching some films at Sundance that were like sort of that horror suspense genre that were just unbelievable. I mean, Black people are making films, and I feel like, we got this from Jordan Peele, right? That it's okay, and then to use the horror genre as a way to tell stories and our stories and the pain in our stories. But and so I am liking that genre a lot more. It's a really rich, visual, thought-provoking genre. But yeah, I'm gonna have to say the rom-com.
It occurs to me that I've noticed just in the last 5 years or so, this abundance of female directors of color. And I watched Bruised with Halle Berry probably about a month ago, and I had to watch it again. I was blown away with just the storytelling of it and the way that it just kind of felt different having a female director. What are your thoughts on that, and the fact that there is this real huge emergence of female directors, particularly directors of color?
Just think about like where that film would have been 10 years ago, and where Halle Berry, and would she have gotten that opportunity to do that? I loved that film. I loved her in that film. I thought it was rich and beautiful and told a really great, important story, right? And I think that women filmmakers from, any ethnicity, right? It's really important that that we're there to help tell those stories. We tell stories in a very different way. And I just feel like, and Regina King, And, I mean, it's sort of like open the doors and let us in. And Ava and Demaine, who's local, who's from here, to get the opportunity to bring that such specialness to a film is unbelievable. And we are going to see it more and more. And that's the films that I was watching at Sundance were both directed by, women of color. And, I mean, there are just these nuances that we don't necessarily get from a male perspective.
Do you think the representation of women filmmakers is getting better?
Do you mean like that people know about them?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is because little by little, right? It's that little trickle, and it's really the celebrity women filmmakers that we're hearing more about. I think that the independent world, it's really, really important for us to immerse ourselves in that independent world, because that's where you're going to find a lot of women directors. I think it's really important that people do go to film festivals, and I'm not just plugging that because I run one, but I do think that it's important that people go to independent film festivals, that they understand who's making the content, that they follow those filmmakers, and they hear and they see what they're doing, what their next projects are, because that's how they're going to continue to get recognition. I do think it's slow and it's a slow trickle, but I also think that that it certainly has changed in the last even 5 years. That we're seeing a lot more women filmmakers.
I mean, I can speak personally that I find it tough sometimes, particularly when, I go to certain conferences or organizations, and I'm one of very few women of color in the room, whether it's the producer or director. And, I mean, unfortunately, that's usually the case of a person of color, that they are usually one of 2 or 3 in the room. And I'm just wondering that, I want you to do like another plug for the supporting of independent films, because I think that's really where we are. There's like an untapped just multitude of gems that exist in this business that many people will never ever know about.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's really, it's also like joining organizations like Women in Film or, Black Girl Mafia or things like that, so that you are with other filmmakers, and that you have to create that network. And I think that's really important. And I love to see that's happening more and more, right? That there are spaces that you can enter and feel like you belong there. And it's really important for us to be supporting each other. I'll never forget many, many, many years ago, as part of a color film program, we were teaching screenwriting at the DeWitt Center, and it was all women, and it was all Black women. And, there's 2 Black women teaching, myself and Deb Sharif. And we were sitting there and we were teaching the story, and we were going through, and people were reading their stuff, and this woman just started crying, and we were like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on here? And she just said, I have never been in a room where people understand me and don't question me.
Wow.
And don't tell me that my story doesn't make sense. And I thought, aha. And that's important. And it's important that, like, what Ava's doing and creating space and creating opportunities for Black women especially, to shine and to be seen and to be heard. And I think that the more you're in a room like that, and the more you get the opportunity to be in a room like that, instead of a room like Reno that we're always in and we're the only Black person and the only Black woman and constantly having a code switch, it makes a difference. It helps you grow. So the more that we can build those opportunities for people, I think the better off everyone is going to be.
I want you to talk a bit about your documentary that you're currently working on, about the Boston Negro Theater Unit. Talk a little bit about what this is about.
This is a labor of love. It's like I've been working on this for tens of years. And I have to get it done because it's really a love letter to my family. Just like I was talking to before, there was during the WPA, there was a bunch of these theater units, and they were segregated. There was the Yiddish theater, the Italian theater, the Negro theater, the Irish theater. And they were all operating around the country in different places in the country. And it was where the government felt like activity was happening. So they would they would go into those places and say, here, we're going to, pay you to put on theater. And it was like, as my grandfather once said to me, it was like we were living high off the hog. This was the Depression, and we were getting paid to do theater. And so I just feel like talk about not knowing. It's been touched upon on various, big screen films, but never has there been a conversation and a film about the Negro theater itself. And the fact that it was in Boston, and the fact that Boston was chosen, the fact that a Black woman headed it up until her death, and then Ralph Coleman came in and ended up becoming the director here in Boston. And the other great thing about it is that the theater companies used to they would share each other. They would be like, oh, we're doing, Macbeth, can somebody, we don't have somebody's out or whatever. And they really did do mixing. And that was one of the biggest issues, with the theater, with the WPA, was that it was always felt that it was being used to push, the New Deal, the New Deal way of life. And so they called it communism, and they shut it down 4 years later. But it was a wonderful opportunity for Black actors to work as actors during that time period.
Wow. We need to take a quick break. More with Lisa Simmons. When we continue, you're listening to the PowerPLAY Show.
I had great friends, but you always had the bullies. So there was one in particular. It was VK, and he was awful. He was 2 years older than me. I think anytime he passed me in the hallway, he called me Spot, like any chance he got. And he, there was a few. He was the worst. So I'll just focus on him. But, I remember one time we were walking home in the park, and he grabbed my winter coat and threw it in the dumpster, just to be a jackwagon. and it was just, he's like, go get it, Spot. And my sister wasn't there. So I had to go get it. And it was like, what, why? Just because I look different. And Spot was definitely the nickname that everybody gave me. And that was hard to hear. I felt whole. And if someone is meeting somebody for the first time and doesn't have that validation, then they're still going to have that empty feeling. They're still going to have that I don't belong feeling. And how stupid is that? Like, you're coming into a community because they look like you and know what you're feeling. And then if somebody says, well, your spots aren't as bad, that's so insulting and so horrible. I had that happen to me at a conference in Detroit because they said, oh, I don't even see your vitiligo. And it's like, I'm at a vitiligo conference. What? It is. It's, you want to feel included because we haven't been included. They feel what it is like to have vitiligo. That it is more than our skin, and that there's highs and lows with it. There's also good things. I've met incredible people because of my vitiligo that I never would have met in my life, ever. I never would have went to Detroit. I never went to DC like that. I never would have met these people and connected. It's crazy because I have a second family that I'll always have, and it's precious.
Now, back to the PowerPLAY Show.
I want to switch gears and talk about your work with the Roxbury International Film Festival going into, is this the 24th year?
24th year, actually.
Very exciting, very exciting. So tell me how this all came to be.
Wow. So Michael Trent and I, who is a dear friend, came together like I said, I was in front of the camera and I felt like we really need the most, and we can have so much more impact if we're behind the camera or creating sort of like a network of, you know, in Boston, because there was nothing here, you know, for filmmakers of color. So we created a company called the Color Film Collaborative, which really is just a networking organization that would bring people together, that would put on classes, maybe, but really it was, hey, there's a lot of you out there that are, one might be working on a commercial set one day, one might be one of the actors, but there was never, you never saw more than one of yourself in anything that you were doing. So the idea was to bring people together so that they would create their own films, like producers would meet directors would meet actors, and they would create their own stories. And at the same time, Candelaria Silva, who was running Act Roxbury, they were looking to do programming, and that board decided that they wanted to do some sort of film festival, and they called us in and said, you know, you guys are kind of doing this, like, do you want to partner on doing something like this together? And so that's sort of like how it went off, and it just continued. And it was funny because we did it for the filmmakers. What we didn't realize was that the audience needed it just as much as the filmmakers did. Right? Because you were so used to seeing these stereotypical films, like that's all that was out there in the movie theaters. Even in the independent world, it was all these gangbangers, and there is an aspect, you know, in you know, Black life for that, but there were all these other aspects of Black life that just were not being told. And a lot of these filmmakers, right, from Boston were telling those stories. So it was really, let's give them the opportunity to take those films out of their basement and put them up on a large screen. And then filmmakers and then audience members came, and it was unbelievable. People were like, oh my God, I haven't seen anything like that. This is amazing. I didn't even know about these stories. How did this happen? And that's when I think we realized this is something that's really important. And so 24 years later, here I am, like, continuing to bring these stories to a greater space.
And having a film festival coming right out of Roxbury, Massachusetts is amazing, just when you think of it. And why was it important to you to keep it in the Roxbury area?
Because that's the Black community, right? I mean, it's so funny too, because we're the only ones who know what Roxbury is and what Roxbury means. So people would say to me, oh, but are you a Black film festival? And I'm like, well, of course. And then I would start getting indignant. I'm like, but wait, how do they know? It's not like the Roxbury Black Film Festival, but that kind of felt redundant. So it was originally called the Dudley Film Festival, but then apparently Harvard has a Dudley Film Festival or something. So it's really important to make sure that it's rooted, you know, in this space, and also a space that my family was all in when they were doing theater. You know, it's where my parents, grandparents, and their parents grew up. It's, you know, I think it's just sort of like to honor that and have people come here and then be like, oh, Roxbury, right. That's Roxbury.
Right. And you had some screenings at the Museum of Fine Arts, and you know, I just love it. And you get submissions from all over the world, from filmmakers of color, and I was honored to be part of it back in 2018 and hope to do so again this year. But how far across the globe do these submissions come from?
All over, literally all over the world. We get them from Asia, we get them from Africa, Europe, South America, you know, obviously the US, New Zealand. We've gotten a number of films from New Zealand that have just been so brilliant. So yeah, that's what's really exciting, is to sort of look and see where our reach is. And I feel like, you know, we were completely hybrid one year, and then last year we were completely online one year, and then last year we went to hybrid. This year we will do some semblance of hybrid, because it kind of works in a way, and it works where, especially if you're doing Q&As and you have films that are maybe from, you know, somewhere, you know, outside of the US, that you have your filmmakers that can come online. And we had someone from Italy at 2:00 in the morning. We had a guy from Egypt who came on. So that's exciting. So to have people from outside of the US recognize the work that we're doing, and having, a great moment with us is really exciting.
And talk a little bit about the plans for this year. You just mentioned a little bit continuing that hybrid model, but when are the dates? When are you planning on having the festival this year?
So the festival this year is going to run the last week in June. So it'll go from a Wednesday, which I think is around the 20th, to like the 29th. So somewhere around those dates, we're still working on that. And so right, I think we're looking to do hybrid. We're definitely looking to do opening night in the theater. We're definitely looking to do closing night. We'll be doing some outdoor screenings again, and some panel discussions, which will probably take place online. And so we're just trying to work that out. I mean, it's so hard to tell with the one day that I know. Oh gosh, I'm sure it's like that with shooting. I'm sure people are like, oh, we can't shoot today because now everyone has COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was shooting, I started May of last year and went straight through October, and had to get vaccinated, make sure everyone on the crew was vaccinated, and still had to do all these precautions. And some of our shooting took places in hospitals, and so that was a whole big thing because of everything.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, but it's it is where we live right now, and I wonder how it is going to affect. We've seen it affect some of the major award shows and everything, but when you talk about film festivals, and I love the hybrid model. I'm actually, I love watching things. You pay your ticket, but you can just watch it online. I love that kind of stuff too. So it's exciting.
I know you don't have to get out of your PJs. I'm just hoping that everyone's buying like mega TVs, so they're actually watching it in the way that the filmmaker wants you to watch it.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely be there. We're going to take another quick break, more with Lisa Simmons. We are going to just talk about some interesting ideas that she may have for you up-and-coming filmmakers. You're listening to The PowerPLAY Show. Hi, I'm Tonya McGrath, producer and director of the upcoming film project, More Than Our Skin. I decided to make this film because I saw a need to let the stories of those living with vitiligo be heard. That it's more than the spots you see. It's the feelings, the depression, the community, and the lives of those impacted by an autoimmune disease with no known cure. More Than Our Skin plans to tell the stories of a diverse cast of people who are willing to share their journeys, many for the first time, as they make positive steps to bring understanding, inclusivity, and acceptance to this widely misunderstood disease. It is my hope that this film will change lives, not just for those with vitiligo, but for the wider audience who will understand once and for all that it's more than our skin. Thank you.
Now back to the PowerPLAY Show.
As we start to wind down, I wanted to get your perspective on some things to help up-and-coming filmmakers. What is one huge no-no you would tell an aspiring filmmaker?
Oh my gosh, one big no-no is bad sound. Like, I can deal with a little blurriness on a picture, but one big no-no is not having clean sound.
Yep, I agree completely. And what is some of the best things an aspiring filmmaker can do besides great sound?
So, there are many, but one of the things that, for our team too, who reviews the films, is to complete your story. You've gone all out, right? To make this film. It's beautifully shot. The sound is great. Like, everything's good. And then it ends. And then there's no end to the story. Make sure that you are ending your story where it should end. This is one of the things, it all comes back to storytelling, and it all comes back to having people read your script out loud, and it all comes back to having people review your scripts, before you shoot them. But I'm seeing that more often than not, and I'm not sure why. But I get to the end of the film and I'm like, is that it? Like, why has nothing been resolved? and so just to be thinking about that as a story, you're a storyteller, right? You're a filmmaker, you're a storyteller. Where is the beginning, the middle, and the end of that story? Don't forget the end.
I interviewed filmmaker Roberto Mighty a couple weeks ago here on the PowerPLAY, and we had a similar conversation. And, one of the things that he talked about in terms of the storytelling is that, the cameras, the audio equipment, the lighting, that's all the bells and whistles. It really comes down to the storytelling. And as you said, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and figuring out what that story is. Because I think for me as a viewer, I'm like you, I'm very forgiving for a lot of technical things if the story is captivating.
Oh my gosh, so much. And to tell you as a film festival producer too, it's like we watch so many films, right? We have to watch so many films. And if I have to spend an hour on your film and then that happens, I get a little salty.
Yeah, it really is. It's about the storytelling. So what's next for you? I know that you're still working on your documentary. The film festival's coming up in a few months. What else is up next for Lisa Simmons?
Really, that's it. I actually said in this year, like every year I try to give myself like new goals like that I'm going to do. And I've been sitting on 2 scripts for quite some time, and I'm really trying to find the time to finish those. I'm not one to have, and I'm like the biggest critic of this. Like I just said it, like have people read your scripts and but I'm not going out to make my movies yet. But, we all hold on tight to our stuff because we're like, I don't want to share that. And I'm not really comfortable with that. But you know what? If you're a writer, write and let people read it. That's the only way you're going to get feedback for it. So I have to practice what I preach. And so, in addition to the Film Festival of 24, we are really going to be pushing hard on the 25th anniversary. It's something that we're going to start working on, as we're working on 24, because it's something I think that's huge, that we're going to go into our 25th year.
Absolutely.
We're all going to be able to be back together again. It's going to be a huge celebration. We're going to bring back people. And so I think that's one big thing we're going to focus on. So for the film festival, and for me, I'm going to try to get that script done.
I know you'll do it. Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest, and tell folks how they can learn more about the Roxbury International Film Festival and the Color of Film Collaborative.
So the best way is to go to the Roxbury International Film Festival website, which is roxfilmfest.com. And that'll give you a whole history of the festival, and it will give you what's coming up. So right now we're sort of in, working on it mode as we're trying to figure out what we're doing. And it will also tell you screenings that we have coming up, that we partner with a lot of folks to do screenings. So to get tickets to those types of things. So yeah, I think that's the best way.
All right. And we'll have this information and the links on our website at thepowerplayshow.com. Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest today. And I wish you continued success in all your endeavors. And I will see you in June.
Yes, Tonya, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Remember, you can listen to past episodes of the PowerPLAY Show wherever you subscribe to podcasts, including iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and now Pandora Podcasts. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Simply search the Hell Bay Productions Media channel, and be sure to subscribe so you always know when we're live. And we air each Saturday at 5 p.m. on BroncoiRadio.com. So tune into a new episode of the PowerPLAY Show each Thursday, wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or on our YouTube channel, or simply visit our website at thepowerplayshow.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Tonya McGrath. Continue to create and build.